So you queued up for mid and wanted to interest Akali, got out of field on top lane though, but you still want to interest Akali, then you're at the right place. If you are here to learn something, I would kindly ask you to leave the auditorium and close the door on the way out, please. To anyone else, please find a free seat and turn off your phones because we are about to start with today's lecture on how to play Akali top lane. You are allowed to take notes on a laptop, tablet or a sheet of paper, but taking pictures of the board is impermissible. So let's get started. But before we jump into how to clap your enemy laner's cheeks, I would briefly go over Akali's strengths and weaknesses on top. Akali has the option to adapt her build and runes depending on who she's facing on the lane. This is one of the things that makes her one of the few assassins you can play on mid with a high burst build or on top with a bruiser build and still be considered an acceptable pick until you look at her top lane stats though. So if your enemy top laner picks a squishy champion, you are fine, and if he picks a tank or a bruiser, you still can manage to win the lane. The next strong thing about Akali is obviously her high mobility and outplay potential. Even if your enemy picks a counter to Akali that he never played before, you can still beat him up as long as you know the ins and outs of Akali to use her insane outplay potential. Her high mobility also comes in handy if you get into sticky situations or when you want to extend her traits, which is a key factor when playing against a beefy laner. You could even use some of her mobility to manage the wave, which is a very important thing to learn, especially on top lane. But if immobile Immobile. And the last thing I want to mention about her strengths is her overall kit against immobile champions, which there are a lot of on top lane. Playing Akali on top against immobile champions feels like bullying a kid, but if this kid catches you on cooldown, you are probably dead. But if an immobile champion overextends, you can punish him and use your mobility to disengage if he tries to start a fight that you don't want. Now to some of the weaknesses that you should keep in mind before jumping into every fight. Because of Akali's low base damage, her early game is weak and she is prone for strong level 1 and 2 champs like Renekton and Darius. That's why Akali needs some levels to really get going. So in most cases, you should play it safe for the first few levels, especially on top lane with champs that have high base damage and CC on the early levels that can completely destroy your laning phase in an instance. I was talking about CC heavy champs already, but I want to put an emphasis on it because one of Akali's biggest weaknesses is hard CC and we have a lot of that on top lane. So keep the cooldowns of your opponent's CC ability in mind and also your own cooldowns from your E and W ability so you don't get folded. The last weakness I want to talk about is how hard it is to play Akali from behind. Akali on mid is hard to play from behind. I think most of you know that, but it gets even harder when you have to play from behind on top. I see you have a question back there in the second row. Yeah, why is it harder to play from behind on top than on mid? Is it not the same no matter on what lane you lose? Good question. Let me break it down for you. Top lane is like an isolated island most of the time. It's far from important objectives and other lanes, so it's not so easy to roam and get significant impact out of it. Often you are stuck in a 1v1 situation against a tank or bruiser who can perma-freeze and zone you off XP and gold. Also, the matchups you usually go up against become really tough once you are behind. They either get tanky so you can't kill them to get back into the game, or they will just tower dive you or start proxy farming. Also, don't underestimate the length of the lane. It is easy for top lane champs to just run you down if you go farm or just walk up too close. But there's one combo that will always get you out of a sticky situation, even if you are hard behind. It's the W into E into flash. That's the best combo to hit the subscribe button as fast as possible. Now, jokes aside though, 99% of you are not subscribed, so I would really appreciate if you would hit that big red button. And we are about to hit 1,000 subscribers soon. And a shout out to Flumoxy for being a supporter for, I think, almost 3 months. That's crazy. Thanks a lot. And now let's jump right back to the video. So now that we got over some of our basic strengths and weaknesses, we should start talking about Akali's runes, builds, and summon spells and all the variations of it. Let's start off with the runes. In most cases, you want to go with Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Haste, Coup de Grace. You can also go with Cut Down if the enemies have a tank or bruiser heavy team composition. And as your secondary rune, you want to go with Resolve into Second Wind and Overgrowth. You can change Second Wind for Bone Plating if your enemy has a good all-in and does not poke you a lot, but in most cases, you want to go with Second Wind just to survive the early levels better so you can reach your power spike safer. Those are the runes you will run against most of the champs you meet on top lane, but sometimes your opponent will pick something that does not really fit into top lane, or he will pick a champ that you can kill easily and snowball off. Then you want to go with more offensive set of runes like Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Grizzly, Mementos, and Ultimate Hunter. Your secondary rune page stays the same with Second Wind and Overgrowth. Now, before I go on, let's have a small test to see if you guys are listening, okay? Guys, please. I know it's easy listening to a lecture, but actually remembering and applying something is the important part. So now let's start. Question number 1 of the surprise quiz. You're facing a Garen with Phase Rush, Second Wind, Doran's Shield. You are using Conqueror, Second Wind, and Doran's Ring. You both are level 2 and have Ignite and Flash. You have your Q and W, and he has his Q and E. And you both are half HP. What is the right play? Number 1, flash on him for the all-in kill. Number 2, stay behind and only walk up to Q minions. Number 3, stay close to the wave and keep poking him with Q. And the last possible answer, number 4, try to push the wave and go base. I will give you some time. Take your time. Choose wisely. I think you had enough time. And the big reveal, the right answer is number 3. I know you knew it. I know you knew it, man. You are my student, obviously you're gonna know it, right? Now let's go over all the options and let me explain why number 3 is the right option and why the others are wrong or not as good as 3. First, to question number 1, flash on him for the all-in kill. First of all, you don't have enough damage and he will use his E and run off with Phase Rush. So you just lost your summoner spell for nothing and that might cost you the lane. Now to number 2 and why staying behind and only walk up to Q minions is the wrong answer. For a Garen, it's way too passive. He will just regenerate all of his health and because of that, he will heal up and you will lose almost all the control on the lane and he will dominate it. Now let's skip number 3 and go to number 4. Trying to push the wave and go base only works if you're under danger or low on resources, but you still have flash and ignite, so you are not low on resources. And Akali has a pretty bad wave clear in the early game, so he might end up freezing the wave and you give up all the build pressure. So now why is staying close to the wave and keep poking with Q the right option? First of all, your Q will give you Conqueror stacks and you can chip him down and cancel his passive healing, so he will stay low. And you still have your W to have an exit plan if he tries to start a fight that you don't want. After you chip him for a while and he's low enough and you hit level 3, you can go on for the kill. So you're basically preparing the kill, keeping him low, but you still have your W in your backhand if he should start to fight. And you do that until you hit level 3 and then you go for the all-in kill. So I hope you all passed. I'm pretty sure you did. So now let's fast go over the summoner spells. If you have a killable lane and are skilled in using Akali's abilities, you can go with TP Ignite. I'm personally not the biggest fan of that, but if you still can jump the ADC in the later phases of the game without flash, or if you don't need flash on the lane to confirm your kills or get to safety, you could run those summoners. I rather would go with Ignite and Flash if I have a lane I can kill early, or go TP and Flash if I know I don't have a lot of kill pressure. You can also go Ignite when you need early anti-heal because it gives grievous wounds that can help you in the matchup like Aatrox or Garen. That's it really. There is not a lot about summoner spells and sometimes it also boils down to personal preference and what you can use better. Now let's get into the item build. But before I start, please remember that over time her build can change, so try to keep yourself updated because the build I will mention might be outdated when you watch this video, so take care of that. As your start items, you have 2 options. The first one would be Doran's Shield. That is good against hard matchups where your opponent has a lot of poke or will win the early trades. Example for that would be like a Jace or Darius. Going with Doran's Shield is probably the best and safest option if you are new on top of Akali, because with Second Wind and Doran's Shield you will not get bullied out of the lane so easily. But if you're a bit more confident or you know you can win the matchup early, go with Doran's Ring. It doesn't even have to be a winning matchup. You can also buy it if the lane is even, but be aware that without Doran's Shield it is way easier for your opponent to bully you off the lane. Even if you have a good or balanced trade, but your enemy has Doran's Shield and you don't, he low-key won the trade because he will heal up and you won't. So if you decide to go Doran's Ring, have a game plan on what you want to achieve. The item build you can aim for on top depends on your opponents. If your opponent is a tank, the enemy support is a tank, and the jungler is a bruiser, opt for Liandry's into Riftmaker. And after those 2 items, you can build Zhonya's for the armor and active, Rabadon's for the extra damage, or if the enemy team is really tanky, you can even go with Bloodletter's Curse. As your 4th and 5th items, you can adapt as you think is needed and go with Void Staff, Banshees, or whatever item you did not buy as your 3rd. But as long as you have your 2 core items, you should be fine. So now what do I build when I face a team that does not have a lot of sustain or overall tankiness? Then your build from mid lane with Storm Surge, Shadow Flame should do the trick. You can also go with Lichbane as your 1st item in specific situations that I'm going to talk about really soon. Your 3rd, 4th, and 5th item pretty much stay the same except Bloodletter's Curse. I would not recommend buying it if you go for burst-like build. Professor, can you tell me what do I buy when I first and second base? Sure I can, but next time please raise your hand if you have a question. If you first base and have enough gold to buy large rod, go for it. You can build that into a Lichbane later. If you can't buy it in your first base, go for Dark Seal and Boots or Boots and Tome. If you have enough gold in your second base for a large rod, go for it and build it into a Lichbane. But if you're short on money again, just drop the idea of going for a Lichbane and build towards Storm Surge and Shadow Flame. This obviously applies only if you go for a burst build. The build path for Lich Bane is pretty bad. That's why you only go for it if you can buy the large rod early into the game. Against the tank, the first base does not change besides the large rod part. You exchange the large rod for a haunting guys. Is it guys? I don't know. And don't go for Dark Seal if you go an anti-tank build. It's not gonna help you a lot. Just skip it and try to buy Liandry's faster. And after your first item, don't forget your boots. 90% of the time it will be Sork boots. Sometimes you can go with Mercury's if the enemy has too much hard CC. Oh, and don't underestimate Oblivion Orb, especially on top where there's a lot of healing. Don't buy it too late if you need it on the lane, trust me. Unless you stop on your opponent, then you probably won't need it. The next topic we're gonna go through is your laning phase, but I won't go in too depth here because I have a separate video on my channel that only talks about the laning phase. So if you want to know more about that, I would suggest you watch that video. You can find it on the top right. Here I will just keep it short and only talk about some basics. First, you need to understand that in most matchups, you're not the main character. In the lane, you have to understand your role and act according to it. What do I mean by that? Try to survive as good as possible until you hit level 3 or 6. That does not mean that you should wait under your tower and let your opponent farm for free. Akali excels in short form trades in the early laning phase, so you should always try to hit your enemy with a Q and at the same time try to farm some CS, but don't push it too hard. You want it to slow push towards you. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Akali is vulnerable to hard CC and also weak in long trades in the early phase of the lane, so you need to play around your weaknesses. How do you do that though? It's pretty easy, as I said before. Just Q your opponent and use the passive to either farm minions or get some extra damage on your opponent. The movement speed of your passive also gives you a form of survivability, so if Olaf is trying to run you down on level 1, you Q him with the tip of your Q, which will slow him down and will get your passive up, which will give you a movement speed boost and let you escape. At level 2 it gets even easier to poke in lane because you now have your W as a get out of jail free card, or to extend the trades and prepare a kill for level 3. But keep in mind that you don't want to force a fight at level 2 unless your enemy messes up hard. But as a default mindset, you want to stay as healthy as possible for level 3 and soak all the XP, cause remember, Akali scales good with XP, especially on the lane. And as an important side note, you should be really careful what you do if your W is on cooldown, especially around the 3rd minute timer, because that's when the enemy jungler usually does his first gank. You are basically a free kill at that point without your shroud. Now that you hit level 3, you can be a bit more aggressive. You can try to force a fight after you hit the Q passive combo, because now you can use your W to get half of your energy back and you can even dodge some key abilities with your shroud. And don't waste your E though unless you know that you have enough damage to finish your opponent off, because in some cases the W is not enough to escape an all-in from your opponent, and that's the point where you will need to use your E to make distance and get into safety. Surprise quiz number 2! Crazy, right? Another one. So now that you know that Akali is not really strong in the beginning, what is the best thing you can do to be safe till level 3 without falling behind against a hard matchup? I'm going to be honest, if any one of you fails this question, you might have to redo the course. So please get it right. Answer number 1, spam your Q on the wave to make it crash into your enemy's tower. Answer number 2, poke him a bit and start a fight and try to go for a kill. Answer number 3, and the last one, let the wave slow push and last it under tower. Take your time. What's the right answer? Are you stressing out? What's happening? Why is your hand shaking? Come on, write down. I give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3. Okay, done. We're done. The timer is over. Time's up. Pants down. We're gonna go over the question now. The right answer, obviously, is number 3. And I know all of you got it. Now let's briefly talk about why number 1 and 2 are not the right answer. Spam your Q on the wave to make it crash into your enemy tower is wrong because, first of all, you don't have enough energy to do that, especially in the early game. And even if you try to push the wave, you will run out of energy and then the enemy will just walk up to the wave and attack you. And there's nothing you can do actually. Next possible answer was poke him a bit and start a fight and try to go for a kill. Obviously wrong. In most matchups, you will get folded on level 2 unless you play against an intermediate bot. Now, why is number 3, let the wave slow push and last it under tower, the right answer here? First, you let him push so you're under or near your tower, mainly because you can then poke him for free. And if he tries to do something against that, you can just walk into tower range and he will get shot. And he also can't run you down because you're already in a safe position. You just have to take a few steps back and you're basically safe. You repeat that, poking him on the tower as often as possible and farming while that until you hit level 3. And after that, you can just run him down when he's low enough and he won't be able to reach his tower because Akali has a lot of mobility and his tower is pretty far away. So he has to walk a lot or either flash to get out. So as I said, guys, not that hard of a question. So let's head on and see what we do after level 3. From level 4 to 5, you keep harassing and prepare the next or first kill on level 6. And after you get that done, you are good to go. Which does not mean that you should waste your W and start a 1v2 while it's on cooldown or so. There's obviously more to the laning phase, like how to use your ability in certain situations or how and when to roam. All that is mentioned in the video that I dedicated to only the laning phase. So if you want to know more about laning phases, I would recommend you watch the video on the top right after you finish this one. The next chapter of course are the top matchups. I'm gonna go into some good matchups, some even matchups, and also some bad matchups matchups or counter matchups and how to deal with them. This is probably the chapter that is the most interesting, I would assume. I will not be able to go over every single matchup, obviously, but I will try to include a lot of different kind of matchups that you can apply then by yourself to your individual lane opponent. Let's start with the Akali favored matchups. Number one, and probably my favorite matchup, is against Yone. If you play it right, it's probably one of the easiest matchups you can have. The basics of this matchup are not to interact with him on level 1 because his third Q is way too strong, so keep your distance when he can dash, and when it's on cooldown, try to poke him a bit. But if you can't, it's also fine because level 3 and past 6 are the levels where you can actually start folding him. At level 2, every time he tries to hit his third Q, you just use your E, and with that you can hit him, but his Q knockup will be out of range. And at level 3 you do the same, but you actually take the E and fight him. If you poke him before that, it's an easy kill, but he's healthy, don't commit to the kill, just trade and use your W to dodge his Qs, and when your shroud is about to end, you just fall back. Or you just ignore everything I just said and skill W at level 2 and then try to start a longer trade with the default Q passive auto attack, Q passive auto attack combo. And when you're out of energy, you use W and keep trading. But be careful if you go for a play like that because you don't have your E to disengage, so if you mess up, he might end up killing you. If Yone decides to use his E to start a fight when he runs towards you, you can Q him once and then mark him with your E, and when he goes back to his real body, recast your E when it's safe to do so. Not when you will end up under his tower with your E recast. Then when you reach his real body, he will be on cooldown and you start playing around your Q and W. You can also Q him, then run towards your tower, and when you think his E will end, you can use your R1 to chase him to his real body and again fight him with your Qs, your E, W and second R. Now to his R ability. Yone's R has a pretty long charge up, so you can most of the time either dodge it with your W movement speed, or you can even just use your W, and after he hits you with his R, he will not be able to get any damage onto you. Then you can use your E to make distance between you and him to get into safety and wait until your W is up again, and then fight him while his R is on cooldown. So you punish him for wasting his ultimate. In some cases, you can even fight him right after he ults you with his R. You just use your W and poke him and auto attack him out of the shroud and finish him with your R2. And don't be afraid to fight him when his Q is not on his third stack, and also when his E is on cooldown. If you give him too much respect, you will not be able to get a kill onto him and he will slowly chunk you down with his W and Qs. The next matchup I would like to talk about is Teemo. He is also a matchup I love playing against because it's one of the range matchups that you can actually have fun on, and I know some of you will think it's a hard lane, but I promise you, as long as you don't let yourself get bullied, you can win this with ease. In this matchup especially, you should play pretty passive and try to get as little damage as possible. That's also why you always want to go with second wind and Doran shield in this matchup to make your life a bit more easy. At level 3 to 5, you can start to take a bit longer trades, but don't get too cocky and die. You don't want to give him a lead early on in the game. Unless he makes a big mistake, like wasting his blind while being low on HP, then you can try to hit him with the E and go for a kill. You can also use your W to cancel his auto attacks while trading. He does not have any AoE damage pre-6, so as long as you go in and out of your shroud, you will win most of the trades. But once you hit level 6, whoa, every time his blind is on cooldown and he's around like 80% HP, you can go for the kill with your R. And after you kill him once, you can snowball the lane and outscale him, which will happen eventually. There are no secret tips and tricks to this lane, just don't lose half your HP for a minion and you should be fine. It's even better when he thinks you are scared, because then the level 6 all-in will catch him off guard. To break it down, poke him with your Q, don't try to get your passive on him pre-level 3, use W to dodge his auto attacks as good as possible, and rather lose minions than your HP. As long as you get the XP, you will be fine, which does not mean that you shouldn't farm at all. Now let's talk about even matchups, which in most cases is skill, jungle or observation dependent. I think there will never be a matchup where the odds are completely even. That's why I decided to take Jax as a slightly Akali favored matchup and Riven as a matchup where the odds are a little bit against Akali. But don't get me wrong, both matchups can go either way. I said before, most of the matchups are dependent on the jungle skill or the observation skills of either player. I think I don't have to explain what a jungle or skill gap is, but I want to talk about what I mean with observation. Basically, it's just who of you is more aware of his surroundings and his opponent. Let me give you an example with Jax here. Jax needs a successful E hit to get a good trade against Akali, okay? So let's say you both are level 3 and Jack wants to go all in and he uses his E and jumps onto you. Akali then can either use W to hide in the shroud while she's stunned and then back off or reposition, or she can use her E shuriken to avoid getting hit by Jax's E stun overall. Someone who plays on autopilot would just go back to farming or maybe poke him with a Q, but a player who's mindful knows that his E has a 17 seconds cooldown and would recast Akali's E and use the opportunity and go for a big trade or even a kill. Another example would be to have an eye on the timer and be ready for the 3-minute mark gank that potentially could happen. So a good Akali player who is mindful will keep her W or E ready until she gets a bit more information about the enemy jungle and knows where he is or what lane he's about to gank. A final example would be the runes of your opponent. A lot of top laners like to run bone plating, so a good Akali player would try to proc bone plating, wait until it's on cooldown and then go for all in or go for a trade to make more damage. I think you get the gist of it, what I mean with observation skills. So now actually go to the Jax matchup and see what you can really do against him or how to play against him. As I said before, Jax will start with his E 99% of the time, and that's the reason you will not use your passive on him, because he will just use E and then run you down and you will lose like 50% of your health. Sometimes they even try to bait you into hitting them with your passive, but don't fall for it. They will just E you when you are close enough and then will chunk you down. Another dangerous thing, especially with Jax, is his level 2. And please, for the love of God, start counting minions on the lane so you know who's gonna hit level 2 first. As a side note, you will reach level 2 when you kill the first minion of the second wave, which would be the 7th minion you would farm. So if he hits level 2 before you do and he catches you lacking, you're as good as dead, so watch out for that. So let's say you both are level 2 now. Do you know what you're gonna do? Right, stay the hell back. I promise you, he will initiate a fight at level 2 that you cannot win. So keep your W ready because he will jump at you. But don't lose hope though, the light in the end of the tunnel is near, because once you hit level 3, you can actually start playing the game, but you will still have to use your W to dodge his E. What else should you look out for when facing Jax besides his E? His passive gives him extra auto attack speed over time, so don't go for a long trade in the beginning unless you know you can kill him. In most cases, just go for a Q and if possible, a passive auto and then disengage. This is obviously an advice for level 3 or beyond. Don't do this on level 1 or 2 as I said, unless you see that he started with his Q or W, then you can fight him more aggressively on level 1 and 2. And once he buys Sheen, you should respect his short trade potential a bit more, and when you did not go base yet, you should push the wave and go spend your gold, or he will fold you and send you back home with a gray screen. Oh, and don't underestimate Jax's ultimate. It gives him extra resistances and an empowered third auto attack, which makes him even scarier in longer fights. So if you want to fight him post 6, bait out his E or make him low enough with short trades so that his extra resistances won't matter in the fight. So now let's jump into the next matchup, which is Riven, where the odds are against Akali. Riven is a scary one because you will lose level 1 to 3, especially if she gets an all-in onto you. Her base damage is insane. She has a lot of hard CC in her kit. Yeah, after you hear that short breakdown, you should know that the way you play against Riven is to stay safe and avoid her long trades. Keep poking her and don't burn your E or W for nothing, because if Riven catches you with a third Q, which will knock you up, and follows that up with a W while you are on cooldown, it's as good as over. But it gets even worse when she hits level 6, because a good Riven player can put out a lot of damage really fast, so have an eye on her level 6. If she hits 6 before you do and you are like 6% health, she will most likely try to all-in you with flash W or flash third Q. And remember that running away without your E or W is not going to work against Riven once she's on top of you. I know it sounds pretty scary to match her, and now you want to know how to beat that? Well, I got a few tricks for you, my friend. Most Rivens like to push early, so you could ask your jungler to come over. I'm sure we both know that you cannot trust jungle players, so I'll try to help you to solve the Riven problem all by yourself. First things first, if Riven has Ignite and she plays against a laner where she will beat the crap out of you, which she will if you pick Akali, she will most likely hide in this brush and wait until you walk up to the first wave. And if you ever forget that and she pops out of that brush, there's a good chance that she will kill you at level 1, or she will beat you so low that you either go base and lose the first wave, or you stay and she will flash kill you on level 2. Okay, now let's assume she was not in the brush. What do we do now at level 1? Just farm and let her push. If she uses her third Q on the wave, you can carefully go for a Q into passive auto attack. Side note, Riven's Q can be used 3 times and the last one has a CC in it, so keep that in mind. She has 3 abilities on level 1. So she pushed the wave and she hits level 2 before you do. Don't worry, just stay safe and wait until you also hit level 2. If you think you're in danger, skill W, but if you are confident in dodging her Qs, you can go with E also. But still, don't go for a fight. Keep poking when she makes mistakes, even if you are losing some minions for it. Remember what I said in the beginning, Akali scales with XP and not with gold. At level 3, you can think about taking bigger trades, but try to keep them short because Riven will still clap you in longer trades. Every time she burns her last Q or W, go for a trade. Don't let her get away with it, but don't wait too long. If Riven is a good player, her Q cooldown will be shorter than you might think, because her Q cooldown starts with the first Q. So the moment she uses her first Q, the cooldown will start, and she can delay the second and third Q to have it up faster when she uses her last Q. I think if she delays her Qs as long as possible, her Q has like a 6-second or 7-second cooldown on level 1. But when she spams her Qs one after another, it will have a cooldown of like 12 to 13 seconds. And that's the window you want to fight her. At level 6, short trades can be in your favor, and you start having kill pressure on Riven, and the lane changes and becomes a game of cooldown, spacing, and execution. Your winning condition after level 6 are quick and clean executed burst, heavy trades. Every extended trade, Riven will most likely win unless she's on cooldown, as I said. So the gameplay is to bait an ability if possible, and then go for burst and retreat, but don't let her bait you in an extended fight. A good and short combo is to use Q into E, then you recast your E, you do a passive auto attack, and then you W, and then walk to safety with your W. If that sounds too dangerous, which it can be sometimes, you can also leave the second E and and go for a Q passive auto attack E. And then think if you have enough damage to recast your E. And if you do, take the second E and use your R and W to finish her off. Or you can go for a more basic combo like Q into passive auto attack into Q, then W, passive auto attack, Q, and then use the movement speed from the last Q passive to run it off or finish it off with the E to get distance between you and her. But be careful, don't go too close to Riven after that because her cooldowns are shorter than yours, so wait until you get your E or W up before you approach her again. If you ever see a Riven outside the fight use her R on the lane, be sure that she will try to one-shot combo you with flash, so when she pulls her R, you immediately have to use your W or you will most likely end up on a gray screen. Especially if you're like on 50 to 60% health, that's the range she can probably kill you at level 6. And another thing you should know is as long as you're not hyper fat, you will never one-shot her, so don't blow all your abilities at once. You really have to use your passive auto attacks and your slipperiness to win the all-in fight. So these were two matchups that can go both either way. One where Akali is favored and the other one where she should be a bit more careful. Now let's hop into a matchup where you get manhandled every second of the lane. I'm not gonna go too deep in the next two matchups because if you get hard countered, there's not much you can do besides waiting for your jungler or roaming. The first matchup I would go over is Kennen. I think most of you who knows what Kennen's abilities do also know why he's a counter. First of all, he's a ranged top laner, which is already painful to play against. And not only that, he also has a hard CC built in his passive. Like bro, it's his passive and it's a hard CC. Every time you walk up for a CS, he will auto attack and Q you without having to go close to do it. And he will do that the entire laning phase 24/7 from a safe distance. And anytime Kennen gets his passive on you, he will stun you when he gets 3 stacks. And he can get those stacks either through an empowered auto attack or his abilities. Any of his abilities, doesn't matter. So if you try to trade him, he will in most cases stun you and either run to safety or auto attack you. And this stun can destroy your entire combo flow. Oh, you hit your E and now you want to go for re-engage? Nope, he will QWE or Q auto attack W and that's it. You're stunned. You think you can just use your W to dodge his Q and E? Sure, buddy. His ult will cover most, if not all of your shroud. And you know what applies stacks also? Yes, his ultimate. Let's say in a other universe, his ultimate just gave you 2 stacks and not 3. The second you pop out of the second you pop The second you pop out of your shroud, he will just W, which will automatically hit you because his W hits everything that has already a mark on it. And I'm pretty sure he can W inside of your smoke. So your jail out of 3 card does low-key nothing besides dodging auto attacks maybe and giving you energy. So don't feel too safe in it, I guess. And I didn't even talk about how he shutdowns you when a team fight starts. Your entire burst damage is almost impossible to get out if he is also in a team fight. And the best part is he doesn't even have to scale to counter you. He could farm all day long and chill and would still counter you the entirety of the match. Oh, and his item build can become pretty HP heavy, so you're not gonna one-shot him anytime soon. So what should you or what can you even do? Play safe until you hit level 6, and once you hit level 6, go for an all-in before he builds too much HP or damage. Early on in the game is where you can maybe kill him, especially when his E or W is on cooldown. It also would help if you would not eat every Q he throws at you. And that's it actually, there's not a lot you can do after that. Maybe if the Kennen player is bad and throws his abilities out 24/7 and doesn't use his passive auto attacks and is low on energy, then you can maybe beat him, but the average Kennen player will not do big mistakes like that. The next counter I want to go over is Kled, and thank God he has low play rate. His first health bar is hard to get rid of. You have to all in him in most cases to kill his horse, and after that you are left with no cooldowns to finish his small form. So while you wait for your cooldowns, he will just get his horse back and be safe again, and that's not even the worst part. His Q and E are like the most dangerous weapons known to humankind against Akali. His E counters your shroud, because if he hits you with that in a fight, which is not really hard, he will reveal you and mark you. And you know what he can do once you are marked? He can recast his E and dash through the marked target again. So it becomes almost impossible to get away from him once he's on top of you. Give me a second, it gets even better. If he marked and revealed you with his E, it becomes fairly easy for him to hit his Q while you are in your shroud. And I should probably also mention that his Q also reveals you. I mean, why not? And if you can't get the Q off of you in time, he will pull you towards him, slow you down, and beat the crap out of you. So your W is even more useless than it was against Kennen, because Kled will be able to hit you in your smoke no matter what. If he hits his Q, he will always use his E right after to confirm that his Q will go through. And once that happens, the only thing you can do is W to get movement speed and use the E to get more distance. He will dash after you, but there's no other option than at least try to escape. Besides maybe ulting him to try to cancel his Q and then either fight him, which will not go well for you because his extended traits are better than yours, or you use your second R and E to disengage. And I mean, using your R to dodge his Q and E is a hefty price to pay, especially in the early game. And once you're in his Q range, while your R is still on cooldown, he will most likely run you down with QE, and if he needs it, even his R. But don't lose hope, there's still one way to kill him in lane and get the upper upper hand. Every time he tries to Q you, you have to hit your E and make his Q cancel and go on cooldown. Then you recast your E and start an all in unless you are low on HP. It's like against Yone, as I mentioned. If Yone tries to hit his third Q onto you, you use your E to disengage, and at the same time your E hits him so you can re-engage when his Q is on cooldown. It's the same thing with Kled. He hits his Q, you immediately E, get out of the Q range, and then you use the recast of your E to start a fight. You can also try to poke him with 1 or 2 Qs before, but I would not really suggest that because Kled's Q goes through minions. So every time you can Q him, he will most likely Q you through his and your minions, and it won't be that easy to hit your E because you will hit a minion. So I would recommend just either waiting for him to run towards you and try to Q you, or maybe you bait him in trying to Q you so you have an easier time landing your E. But if he lands his Q and E, please be careful and don't try to fight him for too long. So that's it basically for the matchups. I know you probably want me to go over all Akali matchups and tell you what to watch out for and how to play around it, but that would be too time intensive and the video would be way too long and unwatchable. You just have to play a lot of Akali no matter the matchup so you can learn how to win an easy lane and how to survive the hard ones. I was thinking about showing some combos and tricks, but I don't want this video to be longer than it already is. So check out my channel for other Akali guides where I show you some tips and tricks on how to win your lane, how to play the mid game, and I also of course have a beginner guide where I show some combos and other cool tricks that you might need. So if you enjoyed this video and learned something, I'm sure you're gonna like the other guides even better. Please consider subscribing to the channel because we're about to hit 1,000 subscribers. That would mean a lot to me, guys, and would really help me out. And if you think I forgot something important, please let me and others know in the comments below. That's it. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao!